Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance and your service. Secretary Duke, you talked a little bit about the vetting process and the extreme vetting process a little bit. I'm just like to drill down on that a little bit and ask you, is there a system to investigate or at least query in a minimal sense, at least, the intending entrance for an ideological affinity to some other alien or hostile legal system opposed to the U.S. Constitution, similar to what was done by the United States during the Cold War with some of our adversaries whose potential entrants wanted to come into our country?
Yes, an affiliation with an ideology or a country that is known for ideologies that are contrary to the United States is something we look at in terms of the extreme vetting.
So there's literally a question and answer portion to that, or when you say you look at it, what does that mean in practical terms?
One of the things we look at is where a person has traveled to, and if they show a travel pattern in countries that have a high degree of terrorism, we look at that. We also look at social media, if appropriate, to see if there's anything on it that indicates they are following terrorist websites, those type of things, for example.
Well, not only just terrorist websites, but things that are antithetical to the West and democracy and our Constitution is what I'd be interested in as well. Not only just terrorism, but that. And I'm wondering, do you literally question them as opposed to just looking at their travel and maybe social postings? Do you ask them? Do you agree with the United States Constitution? Would you uphold and defend the United States Constitution? Do you believe that Sharia law should supersede, for instance, the Constitution?
I do not know the specific questions of the interview, but I can get back to you. And I do know they adapt based on the person's scenario.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, and I will look forward to a continuing conversation on that. Director Wray, thanks for your service. Good luck to you. Just curious, if you can tell me if the FBI has taken any steps to reverse the previous administration's purge of training courses and information about Islamism, jihad, sharia, and the Muslim Brotherhood.
Congressman, I'm not aware of any ongoing efforts to purge training material.
They were purged in the last administration.
Oh,
so my question is, have you taken any steps, or said the FBI, as you know it, taken any steps to reverse that purge or include some of those things that allow us to see in totality the threat that faces America?
I have not studied what has been done in the training, but I appreciate your bringing that issue to my attention, and I'm happy to take a hard look at it.
Okay, if we could have a continuing conversation on that as well, I'd appreciate it. Director, Antifa operates across the U.S. in ways that involve at least potentially criminal interstate activities, such as inciting a riot and conspiracy to incite riotous behavior. I'm wondering if the FBI is doing anything to counter Antifa in that regard, including and investigating their funding sources.
As I mentioned to Ranking Member Thompson, we do have a very active domestic terrorism program. And while we're not investigating Antifa as Antifa, that's an ideology, and we don't investigate ideologies, we are investigating a number of what we would call anarchist extremist investigations, where we have properly predicated subjects of people who are motivated to commit violent criminal activity on kind of an Antifa ideology. So we have a number of active investigations in that space all around the country.
So that space would include individuals, but if a group itself, even though, like you said, it's an ideology, but if the group is receiving funding to promote that ideology, which is not congruent with the law, is that something that you delve into, especially when it crosses state lines?
Well, certainly, anytime we're doing a domestic terrorism investigation, whether it's just into an individual or to, let's say, a collection of individuals, we do enterprise investigations when there are multiple individuals working together, and the funding that supports violent criminal activity is absolutely something we're keenly interested in.
Okay, I appreciate it. Finally, Director Rasmussen, regarding Antifa and their international networks, can you describe how the NCTC acts to counter them if you do?
Thank you for the question, but we actually don't. With respect to domestic terrorism issues here in the United States, my agency's mandate and authorities are limited to matters of international terrorism, and that was in the founding legislation that created NCTC. So we defer to FBI in this role.
So if there are international connections to these groups that are operating domestically, you turn that over, you don't take any?
Well, certainly if there was
jurisdiction?
intelligence that tied any individual here in the United States to a foreign terrorist organization, that changes the nature of the problem and becomes very much a collaborative effort with.
But if it's not a
with
foreign
FBI.
terrorist organization, but foreign organizations or foreign funding, does that invoke your authority?
Not to my, I don't believe so unless it would involve a foreign terrorist organization. But if that kind of intelligence were to emerge, we would certainly make sure our FBI colleagues were aware of it.
Thank you, sir. You yield back.